Hello, so my name is Ed, I'm an Etsy seller and I've been selling on Etsy for a long time. I recently went into print on demand about 6 weeks ago. I started this clothing brand. Clothing brand, clothing store, whatever. I basically started a new store where I said, okay, I'm going to do clothing on this store and I'm only going to sell the clothing that I'm obviously selling. I'm not going to say what it is, but today hopefully I'm going to give you some advice which is going to help you start making some progress with your clothing brand, because a lot of the time people are just starting these clothing stores on Etsy and you'll put out say 50 listings and you still have zero sales, or maybe you have one or two but it's not really got that much traction. So hopefully I'm going to help you make some progress with that. And there's a couple of key mistakes that people make when they're doing Etsy print on demand, and particularly with clothing. A lot of people go into Etsy clothing and they think these items that they're selling are just going to do well automatically. But no, a lot of the times there's a couple more factors that you have to take into account that you probably haven't thought about before. Um, so I'm going to go through them today. And just for a little bit of proof of concept, I scaled my clothing store. I started it around 6 weeks ago. No, I didn't even start it 6 weeks ago. I don't know where I got that number from. I started it around a month ago, and within the first 20 days, I'd already got it to £100 a day or 3k a month, whatever you want to call it. So scaled my clothing store to 3k a month within 20 days, essentially. So that's my backstory. I've never really sold clothing much before. I've done a little bit here and there, but I've never really taken it seriously. And I've basically found out that, okay, now I actually enjoy selling clothing a lot more. If you don't know already, I have my own fulfillment company, so I actually fulfill a lot of the items myself. So with clothing, I'm actually physically making the items, printing them, pressing them, etc. myself. So I enjoy doing that, and I think it's something that I'm going to take a lot more seriously in the future, because clothing is a lot of fun and it's something that I'm sort of passionate about. When I'm selling these home goods, it's not really that interesting because it's not targeting my sort of, it's just nowhere near to what I'm interested in, essentially. So I'm a little bit more interested in clothing, we'll put it that way. I've written some notes here of what helped me go from 0 to 3k a month with my clothing store on Etsy. The first point is very important. I think the first point is the most important thing that people don't understand, or at least what I believe to be people are doing wrong, like the most common thing that people do wrong. So you have to do product research on Etsy. You have to find what we call a winning niche or a winning sub niche, and this can be a winning niche of design or a specific winning product. So the winning product could be a specific type of t-shirt which is doing really well with regardless of the design that's putting on there, and a winnings design niche could be an example like a X design targeting X person, is say that design niche is doing very well. So that's the first point. But it's not just that you have to have a unique niche, right? It's the fact that you have to have something which is more interesting and not generic. Because at least in my experience, I found that selling generic items doesn't work at all. So if you're just selling a t-shirt with a design for a mum on it, it is most likely not going to work because that has already been done 10 million times on Etsy before. And you're competing against the people who've been selling on Etsy for 10 years, essentially, when you're doing that. So I think the best thing that you can do, coming to Etsy in 2024, when you're starting a store this year, against the millions of sellers that have been putting out millions and millions of listings for the past 10 years, you need to do something which is more unique and not generic. At least in my own experience, that's what I found. So doing something not generic and more unique, so it could be targeting a specific type of person. You have to have a clear target market, and that's one of the things that I've written down here. You have to have a clear target market, and that being age, interests, and type. So what actual type of person are you targeting? What are they interested in, and why are they actually buying the t-shirt? Because people are buying the t-shirt more than likely to impress someone else or to show off what they're interested in. So if they could have hobbies, and you could target a t-shirt or whatever, any type of clothing at those types of hobbies, or you can just target out the type of person that they are. So maybe they're going through a certain phase in their life, maybe they just went to university, maybe they got their first job, maybe they're becoming a parent. So there's all these different types of small sub niches which you can target. However, the most important thing with that point is that it should be unique and it should be completely unsaturated, because if you go into something like selling t-shirt with mama on it, right? If you sell a t-shirt with the text of mama on it, the chance of that t-shirt becoming a bestseller is approximately 0.0001%. However, if you're selling in these smaller sub niches with maybe slightly lower demand, because there's not every single mum in the world is going to want to buy your t-shirt, or maybe you'll have a smaller whatever you call it, smaller place in the market where you have 1,000 buyers, and then you'll be able to make 3 sales a day of each t-shirt a lot more easily than you can make one of your mama t-shirts become a bestseller, right? I hope that makes sense. But the point is, make it a unique design sub-niche so it's clear who you're targeting and it's not completely generic, because generic, in my experience, just doesn't work at all. So the second point, ideally, you want a unique / low competition base. This is not entirely necessary. Let me first of all explain the word base, because you probably don't know what it means. You probably think I'm talking about music, right? Base, spelled B-A-S-E, and it's basically the product itself that you're putting designs onto. So when you start your store, you can either think, okay, I'm going to sell this t-shirt, I'm going to sell this hoodie, I'm going to put my design onto this hoodie, I'm going to put my design onto this hat. So that is your base. So the hats, the hoodie, any type of clothing, the actual clothing piece that you're putting your designs onto, that is called the base. And you ideally want to pick a base which is less saturated in the market and has a much lower quantity of sellers. So ideally you want to be selling something that not everyone is selling. So I don't suggest going into selling super generic t-shirts, because everyone is selling t-shirts on Etsy. The only time I would say that you can go and sell a t-shirt is that either if the t-shirt is more unique, so it's like a different fit, for example, or the sub-niche, the design sub-niche that you're going to be targeting. So the actual designs that you're putting onto the t-shirt is really unique in itself, and there's a high volume of sales and low competition of other sellers. So that's the only way I would go into selling something which is super generic like t-shirts. That's point number 2. Point number 3 I've written is high volume and a clear sub-niche. So this basically, point 3 here, refers to the fact that you need to have a low competition of other sellers, and you want to have a high high sales volume, that's the word. Not search volume has nothing to do with anything. And by the way, if you are analysing things like keywords, etc., to try and find your competition or how saturated a niche is, if you're using spy tools for that, you're going about it the wrong way. You just need to use your brain and just look at the platform and find how many other sellers are selling similar items to you. Don't just look at using the spy tools, because they're not going to help you. Spy tools aren't going to help you. I cover this in another video. I don't want to get into it too much today, but high volume, clear sub-niche. And clear sub-niche is incredibly important, because you need to have a clear sub-niche that you're going to be targeting with your store before you've even started making your first listings. Because you don't want to start your store and then find out, okay, I'm not actually really sure if I want to do this sub-niche, and then you start wandering off a little bit. Before you start your store, you need to be confident and clear. This is the sub-niche that I'm going to be targeting. It links back to the first point, right? This is the person that I'm targeting. This is what they're interested in. I'm targeting this and this only because it has a high sales volume, and then I can target that and maybe take a chip out of those total sales volume in the niche, right? So high volume, clear sub-niche. And when you're doing your product research and looking at other sellers on the Etsy platform and seeing how much competition there is in the niche, you should basically be finding local sellers, which is important because something that works in America might not work in the UK, right? And low competition, and basically low competition means anything which is 10 plus sellers selling in the same sub-niche. It's just not really going to go too well. It's just way more difficult to make it work. More than likely you're driving each other's prices down as well, and it's always not good to be competing on price. And a lot of times you will be able to see the competition of your niche by just looking at the prices. If the price is extremely low and the sellers are likely running 10% or really low, really slim profit margins, then that basically tells you there's a high competition in that niche, because everyone wants to get the lowest price, because that's what the customers want to buy. They want to buy the lowest price item. But if you look at a niche and they've got reasonably priced items, like if you see t-shirts on Etsy selling for £25 each, that is good. That is very, very good. So those t-shirts which are selling for £25 each, that's a good niche to be in, because then it's going to be lower competition because people are able to sell at the higher prices. So just to summarize, we went through 3 of the most important things which are going to be helping you scale your Etsy clothing store. So first of all, having a unique design sub-niche, and that's mainly focusing on the target market, making sure you have that clear target market and you know who you're targeting and the specific type of person that you're going to be targeting with your store, right? So that basically means the listings that you're going to create are around X person, because X person wants this, and that's what I'm putting onto my t-shirt, so on and so forth. And ideally you want a low competition base. We covered the word base. It's like a t-shirt or anything that you're putting your designs onto, and that should be fairly low competition or more unique, because that is how you're going to separate yourself or differentiate yourself from other sellers which are selling the exact same thing 3 times over again. So another point, just adding on to that, you can also do something which I call manipulating the niche. And manipulating the niche is putting design A on base A, and you can put design A onto base B. So for example, you can put design A onto a different type of t-shirt. Maybe you can even put design A onto a hoodie or a hat or something like that. So manipulating the niche is basically a really easy way to create a new, slightly different demand for a slightly different product of what is already working. And this can work really well. This is how I've actually made some of my best sellers, or found some of my best sellers in both clothing and other sort of other home goods items as well. And it really does work. It really does work as long as you're targeting the right person and it sort of makes sense on the product. Of course, if you're taking t-shirt designs that say something like this t-shirt is upside down or something like that, then, and you're putting that on a hat, then it wouldn't make any sense, right? So it has to make sense. And the third point, just summarizing, high volume, clear sub niche. And this is basically referring to the fact that you need to do your product research and you need to check to make sure there's not too many sellers who are going to be selling the thing that you want to sell as well. Any more than 10 sellers in selling the same items that you want to sell, yeah, it's a no-go. It's a no-go. And to be honest, in the niches that I sell in, there's probably only 5 or 6 at most sellers that I'm competing against. Ideally, you only want to have 2 or 3 other sellers selling the exact same product as you, if not similar. So yeah, there you go from there. So I think that wraps it up. If you have any questions, make sure to put them in the comments. I'll try and answer them, or maybe I'll make another YouTube video about them answering your questions. Hope you found this helpful, and hope you like the scenery. I'm actually outside for once. I'm not standing in front of a whiteboard. I'm actually filming a video outside in fresh air. By the way, I have my own fulfillment company. It's the best fulfillment company in the whole of Europe because we can fulfill and make any products that you want to. So if you do want us to make products for you, if you're selling anything on Etsy like clothing, even if you have your own clothing brand, or if you do anything e-commerce related, we specialize in creating print on demand and personalized items. So we can basically make anything for you. If you've ever wanted to sell something on Etsy and you think, oh, I don't have a laser engraver, then you can come to us and we can make the product for you. We send it direct to your customers so you don't have to handle anything. You just have to essentially place an order with us and then we send it to your customer. Simple as. Also, if you want to book an online call with me, I do one-to-one calls for an hour and I help people with Etsy. I help people scale their Etsy stores, open Etsy accounts, etc. Make sure to check that out if you're interested. I'm not here to sell you anything, I'm here to help you. Make sure to check out my fulfillment company because that's the most valuable thing that I provide in my whole life. Have a good day, keep working hard.